I left these to dry overnight and I took them out of the clamps. And now all I'm doing is getting rid of any glue squeeze out along the edge that I want to put up tight against the fence so that I can cut these down to rough size before I run them through the planer. Alright, now that I've got the blanks all squared up and smooth, I can cut them length. I'm going to trim off the end first, and then I'm going to set up my stop so that I can cut them all to exactly the same length. Okay, I made that cut, and I've got a little bit of chip out on the back there that I don't want and I don't like, so I'm going to use my zero clearance insert here. That's exactly what this kind of thing's for. Other than small parts, it also helps to prevent chip out. So recut that, and then I'll cut the other ones, and that should prevent that problem from happening again. I've got my stop set up now and set for 25 inches, so I'll be able to cut them all at exactly the same length. Now next up, I need to cut the tapers in each of the legs. They're going to taper, I don't know if you can say it's outwards or inwards. I always get confused about that, but the taper is on the inside of the leg set so that it's straight on the outside but tapered on the inside. So let's put it like that. And to do that, I've got my tapering jig here. I made this a few years ago. I don't use it very often, but when I do use it, I'm glad I have it, that's for sure. It's easy enough to use. I want to taper the legs from starting at 8 inches down from the top and taper them down to 1 1/4 inches, I think would look good on the bottom. So that's going to remove 3/4 of an inch at the bottom and 0 at the top. So all I've done is made a mark here at 8 inches down, and I'll line that up with the edge of the jig and clamp it down using the plywood hold downs. I've also adjusted this stop at the end for that 1 1/4 inches. One of the really neat things about this jig are these 3 steps here, which will automatically compensate for the thickness of the material without any changes. I've got these hold downs here that are slotted and triangular, so they'll span basically anything that you want to cut in here. So I've raised the blade up so that it'll clear the piece that I'm cutting, and I'll run it through and make that first cut. Okay, nice clean cut on that first one. I'm gonna make the other one, but I've got to look at my legs here. I've got a knot right here that is showing, so I think that I want this leg at the back. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna taper this front edge here so that you won't be able to see it. Well, you'll see this little thing on the side there, but you probably won't be as visible. I definitely don't want that in the front 2 legs anyway. So I'm just going to position it so that it's... There's a couple ways you can do this. You can put the bevel side down that you just cut and use the block to hold it up level, and I think that's what I'm going to do. That makes the least number of changes to the setup here. So what that leaves me with is a perfectly tapered leg and on two sides. And then all I have to do is some light sanding on this actually to smooth it out, because the table saw actually made a very smooth cut on this. So that's the first one, and I'm gonna take the time to mark that back. If I can remember how to spell back. I was gonna write bake. Back right. I think it's right. I have a problem. I confuse left and right all the time. It's a problem that a lot of people have. Anyway, enough about my problems. That one done, I'm going to cut the rest. I'm going to pay attention to the orientation though to make sure that I get the best looking face out. These wedges that are left over are really handy to have as well. I'm going to keep those. Now that I've got the legs to the point where the major shaping is done, I'm going to work on the apron parts. I'm going to cut them from this right here. I'm trying to space this so that I'll get the piece out of a clear piece of lumber here in between the knots. I kind of revised my design a little bit. I decided that I like the proportions, yes, but I think I'd rather have it a little bit wider, so I've widened it out to 16 inches. I kind of drew up this in SketchUp just to get an idea of what it would look like. So going forward, I'll be taking all my measurements from that design, and I'll be further refining it as I move along as well, especially as far as the drawers go. As you can see, I don't have any in there yet, but they'll come. And at the end of all this, if you want that design to make your own, it'll be available to download. Now I'm going to cut it to length, a little bit longer than I actually need, because I got further work to do with this. I actually want to resaw this down into thinner pieces. Okay, now that I've got them cut to rough length, I'm going to set my saw to 5 inches here and rip the edge off. And you see that I don't have a lot left over there. I'm just going to move that out a little bit further and just trim that edge and then flip it over and trim it again. Next, I'm going to resaw these into 2 pieces, and then I'm going to plane them down to make them an even thickness. I really should change my blade for this, but you know what? That's too much work. I'm just going to try it with this one. This is a 1/4 inch and it's 8 teeth per inch, so pretty fine. But it's also fairly sharp, so it shouldn't have any problem cutting through this soft wood. Okay, time for more planing. I'm not crazy about sending these short pieces through. I really would have preferred to have them longer. Normally I would, keep all this one length and then, plane it down to the right thickness, make it nice and smooth. But I had to try to get, the knots out. And, in hindsight, I really should have just left it all there, resawed the whole thing and send it through. But I'm going to try this. The worst thing that can happen is that it will lift up or chatter or whatever, but you know what, I'll try it and see. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I've got more wood. Alright, so that worked with no problem. They went through and they're all nice and smooth. And now that they are smooth and even, I'm going to trim the ends, and then I'm going to trim them to final length here on the table saw. Now that I've got my parts all cut to the right length, I've taken the time to sort them out. To put the face side up, I want to make a shoulder cut that'll form part of the tenon in each end that fits in the legs. And as you can see from the drawings, these tenons are not like normal ones. They're only on one side of the board. My stock is only a 1/2 inch thick, and that's why I'm doing that. I also like doing it like that because the other side of the tenon will be on the inside, and normally you have a shoulder there to cover up any gap or inconsistency, and you would never see it on the inside anyway. Also makes things a little bit faster and easier as well. So I've taken the time to, set a sample here, set my blade, my fence up to the right height and the right distance to make that cut. So with all those cuts made, I have once again taken the time to figure out what's going to be the top and the bottom. And I made X's in here to show where I need to remove material. I want the tenon itself to be 4 inches, not the full width of this piece right here. I figure 4 inches probably the maximum that you would want to glue something this thick solidly into a leg. So I've got my mini table saw sled put back in the saw here. I've raised the blade up to cut 1 inch, and I'm just going to nibble that material away. Now that I've got all those haunch cuts made, I've reset the saw, and I snuck up on the cut here to make sure it was a perfect fit for this cheek cut. Now that everything's set, I can go ahead and finish making all of these cuts. All right, so what seems like quite a lot of work for very little in the end. Here are their 4 pieces. I'm ready to go. What I need to do now is cut the mortises in the legs. But the first thing that I need to do is make sure that I mark out exactly where they go. Not exactly as in precisely, but just to show where I need to make these cuts so that I don't mess up and wind up with a mortise on the wrong side. So I know I need one here, and I need one here on this one, and then I need one here on this one, and so on and so forth. You might say, well, okay, if you're just picking it up and you can glance at it and see that, why don't you just go by that? Well, you know what? You'd mess it up for sure. Anyway, I'm going to try to cut these mostly on the table saw. Since this is 4 inches and the width of the board is actually 5 inches, that'll give me some room for the blade to curve down. And then I've got 2 things that I can do to finish it. Either clean it out with a chisel, which is one way, or I can round over this tenon here a little bit so it fits in and conforms to that curve. Once again, I'm going to sneak up on the fit with this. I've raised the blade up so that it cuts just slightly deeper than the tenon, so the tenon will fit snugly in the mortise without bottoming out. I've got that dialed in for the distance it needs to go. I've got a pencil line made right on my fence here, and I've got the distance that the blade is from the fence dialed in as well. So I've got to make 4 of those cuts, 1 on each leg, and then I can move the fence over just enough to get that 1/4 inch space that I need. And then I'll need to rearrange the whole thing again to make these cuts over here. Okay, I've got them all cut, and they're a good fit. They slip in there nicely. They're not too tight. They're definitely not too loose either. Like that. And when I slide it down, it stops there. But if I slide it in this way, it looks like it's only being held out by about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off the corner here with the bandsaw, and then, you know, sneak up on that fit too. I don't think it's necessary to chisel out that because I've got lots of area here for these parts to join together. All right, I did a dry fit to make sure it all went together correctly. I'll just get the drill up here to counterbalance that because it'll fall over. And now I can glue it together. I've already got a clamp laid out. Be a little bit careful. This time though, I'm going to be using polyurethane construction adhesive to glue this together. You're probably saying in the last video, you know, who are you and what have you done with John? The real John, because he would use construction adhesive, but construction adhesive is great for some things like this kind of glue up right here, because if you've got any squeeze out or anything, it's no problem to get rid of it afterwards. It's not going to soak into the wood like real wood glue will and ruin any chance of stain sticking to it. Not that I'm going to be staining this. I haven't decided what the finish is going to be actually, but I don't want to rule out any options here by using something that, you know, will mess it up. Another major benefit of using the construction adhesive is open time. Gives you lots of time to get the parts assembled, moved around in position, check if they're square and all that stuff. That's something that you simply don't have with wood glue. Wood glue, especially if it's warm in your shop when you're doing this, it sets up way too quick. Doesn't give you any time to position the parts correctly, and you got to pound on it with a mallet and so on and so forth. You've seen the guys doing it with the mallets and the clamps and trying to force it together. And, you know, they got the sound turned down, but you know they're swearing, because I would be. I know I did before I woke up and started using this stuff here for this kind of a glue up. See, I can lay this down, go have a coffee even, and come back to it. You know, it's not going to set up. Not that quickly. So I got to make sure that I got everything right. This is the back panel. And this is going to go in here. I'm just going to slip that in and move it around kind of like that. And take it out again, make sure the glue is well spread in there. The other thing about this glue is it's extremely strong. I didn't use it in the legs glue up because wood glue is actually stronger, and also the wood glue has will create a more invisible glue line than this stuff will. And since you can see, you know, the glue line on the outside here, if I use some sort of clear finish, that is, which is still not certain. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and put this together, which is kind of tedious and boring to watch. And I'll wrap this video up here. I'll leave it with a picture of the thing clamped up, and then I'll see you next time when I'll start working on the upper portion of the cabinet, the part with the drawers in it.